Okay, just before we crack into today's video, let me explain how you can help us. More and more Kiwis are waking up to the fact that New Zealand is in big trouble right now. So how can we turn this country around? The answer is through education. What does that mean? Well, it means exposing more and more people to our videos. It's as simple as that. Just click on the subscribe button on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, and you'll be subscribed. What happens then? Well, when you subscribe, YouTube sends our videos out to more Kiwis. That's how it works. Subscribing is free. You'll never be charged anything. It's just that simple. So please do it and then enjoy the rest of the video. Thank you very much for watching. Just by subscribing, you can play a big part in the solution to fixing New Zealand. Well done, you. Well, hi, you beautiful New Zealanders. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about more Maori grifting. It's water again. They had a crack with 3 waters, and now they're having another crack at water in all sorts of other ways, and this is just one of them, which I'm going to show you today. So what's in the box? In this video, I show a video of ACT MP Mark Cameron. He's good. He is being interviewed by Leah Panapa on the radio station The Platform, which is a brilliant radio station. Mark shows how Maori are using their spiritual beliefs to scam the rest of us. Number 2, I then go on to talk about how Maori spirituality with regard to water is just one part of a tribal raid going on in this country. So we need to know the big picture, and it's so important to know the big picture. Like, where is all this going? Number 3, I show how Maori spiritual ideas like water is a living being must not be allowed to determine legislation or laws in local or central government. The state and religion must be kept separate. And number 4, if Maori want to entertain the idea that water is a living being, well, that's okay, but just don't push it on the rest of us. Most definitely, it must be kept out of law and education completely. Have it on your marae, have it in your homes, but don't bring it on the rest of us. Number 5, I show how Maori are doing this to grift, to diddle ratepayers to make money. It's a complete scam. So watch. So just before we crack into this video, let me just define a few terms. Before we watch the video of Mark Cameron, I need to explain a couple of terms he uses, or Leah uses. The first one is grifting. According to the dictionary, to grift means to scam someone out of something. Usually it's money. And spiritual overlay is another term that Mark Cameron uses. Mark talks about councils now have spiritual overlays. What does he mean? He just means that they have rules where farmers and other citizens are compelled to consult with Maori when wanting to develop their properties in some way. What this means is that we used to have to only deal with a local council. Now, a whole new layer of bureaucracy has been added. We have to consult with Maori. So wrong. It's completely wrong and must be stopped. There is absolutely no mandate for this in the treaty. With this in mind, let's crack into the rest of the video.
The ACT Party says removing tangata whenua from freshwater management would speed up the consent process and make it cheaper for ratepayers. They are leading a national petition to scrap Timana Oty and remove national freshwater bottom lines, arguing that these spiritual and nationwide mandates drive up costs, muddy consenting processes, and undermine local control. They want regional councils empowered to set scientifically based standards tailored to their communities. Agricultural spokesperson Mark Cameron highlights the burden on farmers, requiring cultural consultants, cultural monitoring, and dealing with unclear spiritual Māori measures, which amounts to spiritual malarkey, dreamed up in Wellington. Adding instead of clear metrics like nitrate levels or sedimentation rates, councils are being asked to assess spiritual values that cannot be measured or contested. And Mark Cameron joins me now. Hello, Mark.
Hello, Leah. How are you?
I'm good, my friend. I know you were at Field Days, and I hear it went really well, but we're going to talk about that a little later on. You've called Timana Oty spiritual malarkey. Can you explain that?
Yes, I can explain. It's sort of been offered to me in more than one instance by many people up and down rural New Zealand, including councillors that often have the luxurious job of trying to sort of authenticate what Timana Oty looks like in their catchment. There's all these spiritual amorphous overlays over freshwater assets. Now, they have said to me, including the farmers in their regions, that it is malarkey, that when it comes to understanding causality, cause and effect with freshwater assets, natural assets in the local environment.
Yeah.
Having the spiritual overlay where they have to authenticate what is the mana of the water or the Maori of the water or all in sundry is exceedingly difficult. Now, I'll just make a couple of observations. The more that we constrain rural New Zealand, the sort of backbone, the economic backbone of the country as it were today, the worse we make it for all New Zealanders. Now, I'm asking, and this petition is asking to seek the insights of all New Zealanders as whether we keep this stuff or not. I maintain, and my party certainly maintains, it's fiscally onerous. And if the council start to operationalise it, how on earth are catchment groups going to understand what is the life force of water? I mean, this is what it comes down to.
So, in layman's terms, Mark, and I'm sure there are different examples that you might be able to give, but so you're saying, because when I looked at this, farmers could be required to have a cultural consultant or a cultural monitoring of it. So if they want to do something with the water, the iwi has to have a say. Is this what we're talking about?
Well, what it had come down to, in some instances, there was cultural overlays over the freshwater use in a catchment group. And I'll give you one example. Farmers had said to me, to alleviate flooding, they would get into a shallow creek, as it were, a shaled creek, and remove sediment or stone buildup with consent from the council to have to undertake this practice. The council would then have to go off and consult with iwi to make sure that there was no spiritual implications that were being eroded in this instance. Now, if I may, I always go follow the money. I mean, this is exorbitantly expensive anyway, and then you have ratepayers trying to go about their dutiful business, as it were, seeking council consent if it is necessary, and then all of a sudden there's this extra layer of, well, who is it offending? And Leah, this is the big problem. Yeah. We as a country spend $2 billion on consents through the RMA process. Now, if you hone in on the freshwater side of it, there's too many people that have right to object on what private citizens are doing on their own property. We do have discharge limits that should be set, I maintain, by councils and local catchment groups, because they take in localism, local rainfall, certain topography, certain soil types. You go to the Canterbury, they have a nitrate problem. We don't have a nitrate problem in Northland. So it speaks to localism and local-led solutions being the best for outcome. And I sadly think in this instance, we found ourselves now having to be signed off by various interest groups that have a cultural or a spiritual aspect or lens over everything we're doing. And it's harming rural New Zealanders.
I.e., they're getting paid. It's a grift. So
yes, I mean, I daren't want to sound unkind. Everyone's got the right to object, I think, is the point. But in this instance, it has now become something of a commercial enterprise for certain interest groups to say, we have a cultural aspect to this that is being eroded, and the councils are then held to traction or in traction. They can't make a decision without getting it signed off by iwi. Now, I maintain iwi are important, but they're no more important than any other New Zealander that has an interest in freshwater assets.
Mark, was this part of the Three Waters deal that I thought this was stopped by
that is correct.
The current government?
That is correct, and it has to be done. The work through the NPS for freshwater has to be done through various stages. It has to be litigated correctly. But the wider point being is that we have to take New Zealand on a journey with us. And if New Zealanders don't agree with the ACT Party, then they deserve to have their say. But at this point, I maintain that no one's having the conversation, and we're putting it out there as saying, do you think, and our petition is certainly saying, do you think we should keep this stuff? If so, why? We maintain we shouldn't, because we are in rural New Zealand an economic powerhouse, and currently we're constrained.
So again, with the Three Waters deal, that the government went, no, we're not interested, it's gone. How come you've got to petition, Mark, if this was part of,
I would offer, Leah, I would offer this. There are certain members of our coalition partners, as it were, parts of government that maintain that in this instance, parts of Timana Oty should stay, beg your pardon. We maintain that is probably not prudent.
Yep.
And, without invoking the agree to disagree clause, we're working alongside our coalition partners, but we're voicing our independence, which is that we maintain this is harming rural New Zealand, and we want to get and find out if, in fact, there's a consensus with that sort of perception of it, as it were.
Yeah. So what I've gathered from this, you would like to see local governments and the communities are better placed, Mark, to protect the waterways than,
Absolutely.
as you've said, the spiritual malarkey dreamed up in Wellington. Yeah.
Absolutely. And if I may, yes, absolutely. I do maintain it is malarkey because, I'm a fairly devout sort of a guy, and if I want to enjoy some degree of spirituality, I go to church. I don't interfere in freshwater assets around New Zealand. And a couple of observations, Leah, if I could be so frank. I mean, I spent time with Tracy Collis, one of the mayors up in the Taurua district, and then you're down with Helen Lash in the Hokitika region. Now, they're both mayors that I have a lot of respect for in their former and current roles. And they've both said to me in their catchments, which are very, very different, with very different problems, that when I was in conversation with them, perhaps this isn't going to work. And when you've got councillors and people as part of the Mineral Forum saying, you know what, we work for our ratepayers, we try to reduce costs, and now that we're being asked to interpret various parts of, the former legislation and the current one or the current framework of Timana Oty, we don't know what that looks like. And then we have to employ another layer of bureaucracy to figure it all out. That invariably invokes an increase in cost, which only gets handed on to the ratepayers. Now, one final observation. You ask the average ratepayer in New Zealand, do you think you're getting a fair run at the wicket? Universally, I would argue they're all going to say, in uniform, we are getting ripped off. It's too expensive in terms of rates now, let alone having all this stuff added to it.
Yeah. Yep. Field days, Mark. Was it a great turnout? Impressed?
I must confess, I've been away on sick leave, so I wasn't in or at the field days. Sadly, I've been. My kidneys have given me a bit of grief, so I've sought leave of the house for a while. But by all testament, the field days was fantastic, and it's the epicentre of an annual thing for rural New Zealand, where we celebrate the men and women up and down rural New Zealand, the innovation, the great ideas, and how, it really is, the epicentre, the chief event for rural people to come together and celebrate being rural farmers in New Zealand.
Yep, I saw. I spoke to a couple of people down there over the last week, all saying that we're expecting a really good turnout, and by all accounts, I think it was a good time. I know. Yeah, I know there might have been a few new tractors on farms. And
I think the investment booster is probably a good thing. I mean, tax alleviation is always going to be well received in rural New Zealand when it comes to, and it's certainly new purchases. And I think until recently, all the sectors were in the doldrums. There's been a turnaround in the last 18 months, 2 years, which has seen, and certainly our economic numbers can certainly, speak to that. But rural New Zealand is on a high, and it's a fantastic thing to celebrate. And I do sort of vouch for rural New Zealand, which and I think, in this instance, they're holding up a big chunk of the economic activity in the country. Sadly, tourism has taken a significant dive and hasn't really recovered post-COVID. And dear old rural New Zealand, it just gets up, pulls its trousers on and goes back to work daily. And by virtue, it seems like the economic wheels in New Zealand are turning pretty well because of it.
Which is good. Puts its gumboots back on. Nice.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Mark. Well, I hope you're feeling better, my friend, and thank you for your time today. That is Mark Cameron, who is the ACT Party's agricultural spokesperson.
Okay, you beautiful New Zealanders, welcome to another video. This is an email that you've got in front of you from one farmer to another, and they're talking about Timana Oty, which is the Maori hocus pocus spiritual understanding, Maori religious understanding of water. And it's being imposed upon people around the country, but this has to do with farmers in Otago. So he says, "Hi David, sorry to email you on Saturday, but I don't think this should wait. Last month I wrote to you about the government's failure to repeal David Parker's mad Timana Oty, literally meaning the mana of the water requirements. You know what, this is Maori religion being forced on the whole country, and it's going to be expensive. Watch what happens." A few days ago, the research team at the Taxpayers Union was sent the details on how the rules are playing it out in my local area, Otago. We know it would be expensive, but I didn't think it would be this bad. To comply, the cost to comply for local ratepayers is tens of thousands per household. So this is per household. This is not just for farmers, this is for everybody. Our friends at Federated Farmers were leaked confidential documents out of Otago's regional council, in brackets, and given the mutual interest in this issue, we kindly shared them with the Taxpayers Union team. Here's the summary. Councils were required to give effect to the principles of Timana Oty under the previous government's freshwater policies. Now I'll just say that again. Timana Oty is the Maori understanding of water. They say water is a living being. It's like a person. We know it's not a person. There's no scientific backup for that understanding whatsoever. It is just matter. And this is being forced on the whole country. And behind all of this is Maori wanting to take control. That's what it is about. It's part of the coup. It's part of a tribal raid on this country, and it has nothing to do with water quality or water safety. It has to do with Maori wanting control, and it is part of the wider move by Maori for a tribal raid on the country and taking control of the country. You see, what we have to realize, and this is so important, I don't know how to emphasize this anymore, but what we have to realize is that in this country at the moment, in our country, beautiful New Zealand, there is actually a coup going on. You've got radical Maori wanting to take over the country, and so they're having a crack at the water, which is Timana Oty, which we're talking about now. The activists have infiltrated education from kindergarten to the university, brainwashing all our kids, our grandchildren, and they are grooming them to become voters to all things Maori when they get old enough. Activist bureaucrats have infiltrated Parliament. They're having a crack at taking the beaches from us as well. Activists have taken control of the Waitangi Tribunal. That is a well-known fact. Activists are having a go at taking control of the judicial system through tikanga and introducing Maori law as the first law of New Zealand. They're having a crack at taking over real estate agents, brainwashing them. Medical centres. Did you know that all medical centre staff have to do a course on Maori culture and Maori cultural safety? Can you believe that? They're trying to take control of dock estates, getting all the land that's there. Of local councils, we know all about that. That's what we're talking about today. But it goes further than that. It's Maori wards and everything to do with councils. It has to do with the RMA, the Resource Management Act. That's what this is all about. They're trying to get hold of the health system. They have got control of it. And that is, it's been Maorified. There's Maori words all over hospitals, and Maori patients are prioritized. It's a racist, apartheid-riddled health system that we now have. In immigration, people who come through into our country are given a compulsory course on the Treaty of Waitangi and all things Maori, and that is to groom them. Of course, they don't know any better. These poor innocent people coming in, they just think this is normal, but it's not, because they've walked straight into a coup. There's the Maorification of the police, and of course the big problem we have, a major problem, is that the media is complicit and it is corrupt. It is helping all this because many of the media have joined in, their hard left wing, and they have joined in with helping this coup and facilitating this coup. It's a disgrace that the media are doing this, and they've joined in the Maori religion. They have joined the cult, and so they are helping. Now, it doesn't help that we have an activist prime minister who's trying to be a do-gooder, who thinks that he's being the Nelson Mandela of New Zealand by promoting all things Maori. And then you have another big problem, which is Potaka, Tama Potaka, who's his Minister of Maori Development. These two are working left hand, right hand to Maorify New Zealand and keep co-governance going. In fact, what's actually happening here is we have a sophisticated tribal raid happening in New Zealand. Like I have said in previous videos, pre-1840 Maori tribes were warring and fighting, taking land and slaves and whatever from each other. Aspect of New Zealand society, like a 10,000 headed monster. It's got its tentacles into everything, and they're using social media and so on. So the tools are much more sophisticated today. And so that is what is happening in this country. And we need to wake up to this, that this is a raid on this country. And everybody who is not a Maori activist is in the tribe that is being raided. The raiders are the Maori activists. The raided are all of us and this very country. And if this keeps going, we're going to be the Zimbabwe of the South Pacific in no time at all. So when we talk about Timana Oty up here, this is only one part of the picture. This is only one small area of the farmyard. You have to understand the bigger picture, because otherwise you won't get what's going on here. So I hope we all take a picture of this on your phone, this graphic that's on the screen right now. Take a picture of it and hold on to it and study it and think about it, because that is what is happening in this country. You see, what we have to realize is that this is about capturing the minds of people in New Zealand. That's what they're trying to do. If all those little areas, and there'll be other areas that I haven't got on here, but the media, real estate agents, health system, immigration, police, farmers, the Waitangi Tribunal, the judicial system, all of this is about capturing the minds of New Zealanders. And what's that for? To ultimately to capture votes. Particularly this applies to the infiltration of activists into the education system. And what are they capturing votes for? So they can get control legally. If you can get people voting for all things Maori when they're old enough, then they can legitimately vote themselves into parliament, and then they complete the tribal raid. You see how it works? Now all this is supposed to be completed by 2040, and they've actually written this down in Hei Puapua, that's a document, and also MATIKE Mai. Now I've put both those documents in the description in this video so you can read them for yourself, but that's what it's all about. That's where we're headed. This is like a roadmap so Kiwis get to know what the hell is going on here, and this is where it's going. So when we talk about Timana Oty, this is only one little piece of the jigsaw, but here's the big picture which I've just outlined to you right there. While the new government has announced it will review the direction requiring this, their review is not yet complete. In other words, the national government is very slow to repeal anything to do with this sort of claptrap. And that is because Chris Luxon is an activist, and he is the orchestra conductor inside the National Party, and they are wanting to further Maorification and further co-governance without actually saying it, but that's what they're doing. It's staggering that despite the review, the Otago Regional Council is charging on and aiming to give legal effect to Timana Oty this year. In other words, they're going to make it law inside the council. We understand the council has reached a view that protecting the mana of water means no treated urban wastewater will be able to be discharged into waterways. Can you believe this? What do Maori know about science, the science of water? Honestly, what do they know? In pre-1840 days, Maori knew absolutely nothing about sanitation. In fact, I'll read you a quote Maori were doing with their sanitation before the Europeans arrived. Here it is here. William Pember Reeves was a New Zealand politician, cricketer, historian and poet who promoted social reform. Quote, the Maori attitude to sanitation, personal cleanliness, good eating habits and living practices conducive to good health was the despair of all who knew them. Look at that. How's that for Maori being advanced in their sanitation habits and their desire to be amazing with water and conservation? Reeves has this to say about Maori living and health standards of the 19th century. Quote, they did not seem to realize that they might be healthy men and women if they would accept the teaching of sanitary science as sincerely as they took in the religious teachings of the early missionaries, nor would they be made to realize that foul air, insufficient dress, putrid food, alternations of feast and famine, and long bout sedulous idleness were destroying them as a people, so that as long as they soaked maize in the streams until it was rotten and ate it together with dried shark, the merest whiff of which would make a white man sick, so long as they would wear a suit of clothes one day and a tattered blanket the next, and sit smoking in crowded huts, the reek of which struck one like a blow in the face, so long as they would cluster around dead bodies during their tangi or wakes, so long as they would ignore drainage, so long as they would remain a blighted and dwindling race. A gradually broadening ray of hope for them has, however, now been glimpsed. The efforts of the government have been in matter of education, of sanitation and of medical supervision and have had their good effect. In other words, he's saying the government really stepped out to help Maori with their absolutely diabolical living standards, their sanitation and the way they were living. I mean, you've got to go back up to here and say this. Look, I've highlighted in yellow the Maori attitude to sanitation, personal cleanliness, good eating habits and living practices conducive to good health was the despair of all who knew them. Now this guy's an eyewitness. He's a historian. He's a politician. He's a poet. He was living with them. There you go. So much for Timana Oty and Maori saying they have the high moral ground with sanitation. It's a joke. If this rule is implemented, it will no doubt mean billions of dollars of additional costs to Otago ratepayers, including farmers. You know, you have to ask where the council is at. Where are they? Where is their headspace? They're living in a parallel universe. And the truth of the matter is that many of these councillors and their they're being influenced by Maori on the council and by activists who've infiltrated the council, and the other group is just white woke people who have been brainwashed and who have joined in with the Maori religion. And that's what it is. It's become like a cult that you join in, and it's mindless. It's a bit like Gloriavale, where you join in with something with mindless obedience to it, and you throw your brain away, and you just you get taken over. Current infrastructure, even though it treats water to an incredibly high standard, would need to be mothballed and replaced. So in other words, all the infrastructure that's existing now to keep water pure and beautiful will have to be replaced because of Maori hocus pocus, Maori religion, Maori superstition. We also understand that under the council's definition of Timana Oty, water from one river can't mix with water from another. Honestly, that has got to be the most ridiculous understanding of water in the entire world. Water from one river can't mix with water from another. Hello, the whole ocean is the result of the mixing of waters from rivers. You fools. If such a rule is implemented, it would cause major issues for irrigation schemes where water is stored and irrigated in an area and where it may eventually enter a different catchment. I mean, of course, when you have a dam, all of those waters in that dam, all of that water in that dam comes from many different rivers, many different sources. It's the same with the Waikato River. That Waikato River flows because there's lots of tributaries coming into that Waikato River. I mean, how on earth do councils even consider this? This is the epitome of stupidity, the epitome of a cult, and the epitome of foolishness to even be engaging with this. Again, none of this is to do with the scientific view of freshwater quality. It's simply aiming to give effect to Timana Oty. In other words, you throw science out the window, you throw your brains away, and you simply bow down to Maori religion, Maori superstition, Maori hocus pocus. According to the documents obtained by the Federated Farmers in at least two small towns in central Otago, the cost of giving effect to Timana Oty will be more than $50,000 per ratepayer, residential ratepayer. So there you go. We're now funding Maori religion, Maori superstition, and it's going to break the country. And if this spreads around other councils, it's out of control. The thing about this that I want you to notice is this: Maori top the negative social statistics in the whole country with respect to suicide. 51% of prison inmates are Maori. 64% of women inmates are Maori. They top the statistics with obesity, child abuse, animal cruelty, truancy in schools, and so on. Why would you give effect to a cultural group in the country that is failing in every area? It's like giving the leadership of the country to a group of people who are failing. Honestly, think about that. Would anybody in their right mind do that? Give the leadership of a council or a country to the group who is the most outstanding in their failure in a society? Who would do that? You would only do that if you were insane. See you tomorrow. Please share this video with everyone everywhere. The mainstream media should be reporting on the issues I am raising in these videos, but they're not. Why aren't they? Well, they're corrupt. Why are they corrupt? They are collaborating with Maori activists. There's no doubt about that. In the final analysis, the people of New Zealand, that's us, have ultimate power, not the politicians. Did you know that? The people can kick out the people in power and they can put them into power. How are we going to do that? Well, awareness is the key to change. If enough people in New Zealand become aware of the issues I am raising, we can save this beautiful country. So share these videos everywhere so that come the next election, we can vote the right people in and kick out the people who are destroying New Zealand.